So back to the dragon, one of my favorites, this is a related story, is of Swami Satchidananda, a Hindu yogi, who was asked by one of his yoga students, do I have to be a Hindu to practice yoga? And his response is, no, 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 no. I am not a Hindu, I am an undu, you know? But you get the idea that we're taking off the scales. We're taking off and letting go of the resistances to what's here. The whole path is not a doing path. If the only doing we can describe is some willingness to let go of the scales, to drop the armor. It's an undoing. So we come back to our naturalness. So let me invite you again just to take a moment to perhaps step out of any of the ideas that I'm helping to create swirl around in your mind. Just close your eyes. And you might even ask yourself, is there anything in this moment between me and being at home in my body? Really inhabiting my body, being here. And let the sounding of the gong be an invitation to maybe let go just a little more of the armoring to arrive. Even a short pause is a real gift to your soul. Just to sense the difference between any thought and this living beingness that's right here. So simple, yet our conditioning is so much not to come home. So we'll continue a bit. What we find when we ask, is there anything between me and being at home in my body, is that I wasn't remembering, that I was off in thought, and that there's a resistance to this unpleasant feeling in our bodies. It's kind of a restlessness maybe, or an angst, or a fear. There's layers of tension in our body that don't feel good, so we don't feel like hanging out with them, which is quite natural. But as I mentioned, pain times resistance equals suffering. So what's the suffering? What happens when we decide not to come home? What happens when we resist what's here and stay with our armor and our scales? Well, one thing that happens is that it takes energy to wall off the life that's here. So we get tired. I'd say a lot of the fatigue we experience is in some way pushing away the life that's here. It takes work. Doesn't that make sense intuitively? It takes work. So, like a dragon, we're weighed down by the scales. It takes a lot to carry around those scales. It takes a lot to fight what's here. So that's one of the ways that resistance creates suffering. Another is that when you tense against something, as I mentioned, it creates more tension. So we actually create more physical unpleasantness in our body by resisting what's here. And you sense that with all the wisdom around birthing, that the advice when a woman is experiencing contractions is not to push against the contraction, not to contract against the contraction. It's to breathe with it. Let it move through you, not resisting. Okay? So tiredness, more physical unpleasantness. The third, and I think this is a really important kind of thing to tune into, is that when we're pushing away something inside us, there's some part of us that knows there's something there that's difficult. And so we're living with a chronic apprehension. There's a sense that around the corner something is bad that's going to happen because we know we're pushing away something. So it's a mental tension, and it tugs on our psyche. We can't really relax. Finally, when we're pushing away a part of our aliveness, our identity contracts, and we get identified with what we're pushing away. We get identified as the defended self, the controlling self, the fearing self, the wanting self. So if you're pushing away fear, you actually get more hitched to it. It creates a stronger identification. So like the dragon, the more we resist, the more we live with our armoring, the more we are unable to be intimate with the life that's here. We're homeless. So, of course, the good news is that while we're conditioned to build up some armoring, every one of us, like if you get a wound, we're conditioned to have a scab. Nature also has a way of knowing how to let go of that scab when it's time, okay? And each one of us intuits that resisting, carrying around armoring, being lost in thoughts is preventing us from full aliveness and full realization. We intuit that. And so we get drawn to practices that help us to let go. That's as much a part of nature as the fact that we have survival mechanisms that armor us. That's the good news. Maybe the story that to share with you about the process of the letting go, one of the main themes for me has been working with physical illness and pain over the last years. And I've all my life been very, I'd say, attached to physical activity. I was a jock and a yogi kind of person that had some vanity around it, but more than that, a great joy in moving and exercising and fitness and so on. And as some of you know, about 10 years ago, I went from this real flexible, the part of the reason I was good at yoga is very, very flexible. Well, I found out I had a genetic disease that was contributing to that flexibility to do with my connective tissues. So the very thing that I was proud of and let me be a great yogi turned out to be something that my joints started not holding together. And so it's been a precursor to all sorts of challenges with movement. I had to go from running to walking, so I'd start walking the hills, but then I couldn't do hills anymore, and then I couldn't do sand, and more and more limited, not able to bike, all sorts of things I couldn't do. My reaction was, without knowing it so much, and then I began to catch on, was to armor myself, and my scales took the form of, first of all, a sense of my body's betraying me, so there was some sense of being at war with my body, like it became an object that wasn't doing good things. Does that make sense? It was not cooperating with my plan for life. There was a mental kind of obsessing, what I've described as the 1,000 serious moves, where I was constantly fixated on how to fix myself and trying to plan and work out the problem. So I was living in a problem mentality. That's another layer of armoring. And I think the deepest was the sense of a self that kept swinging between the controlling self, I'm going to deal with this way and that way, and, trying to navigate to, a victimized self, but there was a self-sense that was the very thick story of I am now a sick person. Okay, so I'm kind of giving you a sense of the layering that came up, that my dragonness, that I was carrying around, that would contribute to just feeling disconnected. Now, of course, this wasn't wall to wall, and I was using the practices to say, oh, look what's happening, come back to presence, and so on. But I remember going to a 6-week retreat, and it was just when I was most aware that running was out of the picture, and so was a lot else. And even there, I couldn't do yoga, and sitting in because at these longer retreats, you do a lot of hours of sitting. I wasn't able to sit, so I was having to lie down and just, keep doing body scans and so on. But I became acutely aware of how I had created this armoring, how I was living in that story and planning and caught inside something that kept me from really just being with the body. And just to say, the pain wasn't so terrible. It was chronic, but not terrible. But I was leaving because what was terrible was the idea of living a life where I wasn't going to be so mobile or fit or anything like that. So during the retreat, I became more aware of all the judging and obsessing, of course, because that's what you do at retreat. You become aware of what you weren't noticing. And as I have many times, it became my deep intention to keep meeting my edge, keep meeting where the pain was and softening. And that's the language from Trungpa Rinpoche, a Tibetan teacher who's not alive, but wonderful teacher, just to keep meeting our edge and softening. So rather than meeting our edge and going off into thoughts and planning and more scales, just keep softening back into what's right here. So that was my practice, and it opened me to a deep grief about loss. And it really, under that, just to this changing flow of pleasantness and unpleasantness, and then to just a quality of here-ness, a very the simplicity of, okay, right here. That was really refuge, just keep coming home. And I found that if I could keep on doing that, it was kind of the idea of just this much, just this sensation, this feeling, just stay right here. I re-entered activity, and by activity I mean slow walking, a little bit of qigong, just a little bit of movement that I was doing, body scans. I re-entered the doing activity with a tremendous amount of presence, more than before when I hadn't had to deal with having a body go. So it was like it got me to pay attention on a much more subtle level. And with that, there was this savoring. So it was just like appreciating aliveness itself. So the shift that happened for me was, rather than losing myself in the stories of what was wrong, through coming back into the pleasantness and the unpleasantness, this presence started waking up where there was just this simple appreciation of aliveness. It was like just loving the aliveness itself. And in that, there was a sense that what I am is this space, this awareness, this wakeful openness that aliveness is moving through. A shift in identity, no longer controlling so much. Now, I left that retreat, and I want to say, it's not even as much a confession, it's just acknowledge that it came back, and I went in and out, and it's been a number of years, and I've gotten the knack of seeing that story. I'm much better than I thought I'd be. I kind of plateaued and then even gained back some of my health, but still face limitations that, I hadn't planned on. But my point is that in being with our body, we find out who we are beyond this physical form, and then have this capacity to cherish. I want to share with you a story of another story that's kind of parallel to mine that really moved me. This is a spiritual teacher who says, I had a large abdominal tumor. It was removed. This is a serious bout of cancer. And she said, and with it, when it was removed, all I had clung to as certainties in my life went. I quit work and I stopped the spiritual teaching. I turned to anything I thought might help me change what had led to that cancer, from acupuncture to depth therapy. I became humble before the body. That was 15 years ago. And I can now say that it was the biggest turning point and awakening of all. I had used my body to practice. Now I had to inhabit it. You sense the difference? I'd used my body to practice. Exercise this thing, feed this thing, practice it. Now I had to inhabit it and respect it and love it with all the feminine force and nurturing and understanding I had withdrawn into my spiritual life. And you see, there had been a split. And now she was entering the body. This is the spiritual life through this very body. She said, keeping my heart in my body became my practice. And just sense what that means. Keeping my heart in my body became my practice, and it's become glorious. She said, even the first awakenings into perfection and grace did not come close to showing me the joy of living in the body, in the senses, in each moment. I love my life in a new way. This has become the place of freedom. Keeping our heart in our body. So we bring this courageous, heartful presence to these bodily sensations, to these energies that are here. And the very act of bringing presence here allows tangled energies to untangle and flow more freely. We love our life in a new way. You might just check this out. Just close your eyes for a moment and well, actually, first, open your eyes again. Let's start differently. Take a moment to look at your hand. I think this is really interesting. Just look at it and see the form of it. Okay, just check out this hand of yours. Whatever history you've had with this hand, however you react to the way it looks, what it's done for you or not. And then close your eyes and keep the arm up and just slowly move the arm and the hand through space. Just slowly enough so that all your attention can go to the physical sensations of the hand. The physical sensations. And you can even slow down until you just are, you're still, you're not in motion, but feel the aliveness from the inside. And notice, is there a sense of a boundary where hand ends? If you take away the word hand, what is this? Just letting go of the scale of even a concept. What is this? Can you sense the space that's inside the activity of hand, of this aliveness, that it's emanating from? The space around it, that this is awake space. It's awake, formless space, and the sensations, the aliveness. This energy, this subtle energy, can open us to this being quality that's here. Relaxing the hand down. keeping the eyes closed and just feeling this whole body again as a field of sensation. The body's always in the present. If we want to open to the truth of what we are, the invitations to relax the scales, the defenses, and come home to what's difficult, come home to the pleasantness, come home to the aliveness. Just as you experience the aliveness in the hand, you can feel through the whole body, the shimmering, pulsing, vibrating, tingling, heat or cool, pleasant or unpleasant. What happens is if you let go completely into this aliveness. Allow it to be fully everything it is. Sense what you are when fully present and inhabiting this aliveness. Poet Wu Men says 10,000 flowers in spring, the moon in autumn, a cool breeze in summer, snow in winter. If your mind isn't clouded by unnecessary things, this is the best season of your life. Namaste and thank you.